Welcome back to the final video of this development of our employee management tool. Today I will show you how to create your user-friendly dashboard with buttons and graphics. So let's VBA. At the very beginning, we added a sheet and we named it dashboard. This is going to be where you want the user to run this entire program from. So you want to make sure that it's useful. Of course, I went in and I added a title, which you can fancy it up, make it colorful and all that. I then added two buttons for us to be able to launch our user forms. And then I put this little graphic down here that where it's going to calculate the total employees company wide. And then I'm going to show you how to make it calculate per department as well. So let's go ahead and get started first with our buttons. Now, in order to make our buttons launch the user forms, we have to add a little bit of code. So let's go over here to our VBA, pull this up here. All right. So what I did is I added in a module. And basically, you just go to Insert Module. And I named this one Sub Open Form Employee. Now, notice the other ones we have been doing within the user form say private sub because those can only be used within the user form. This is a just an open sub is a public one. This one can be used from anywhere. So with this one, it's kind of like what we did before with our double click. We enter in call form employee.show, and that will open up the user form. However, I added this little bit here in parentheses VB modeless. What that does is that makes it to where when the user form is open, you can still go back to your Excel sheets and do stuff. So it really is a nice thing to have. I highly recommend that you put that here. I did the same thing for open form report and added the VB modeless as well. So once you have that code in there, just as a separate module, go back to your dashboard. And now I'm going to right click, manage employees, and I'm going to go assign macro. Now we know we have this is for our manage employees. So we're going to open form employee, click OK. And we're going to do the same thing for our reporting and click OK. So now test it, make sure it works. There's our manage employees. There's our employee reporting. So yay, those two things worked. Let's go ahead now and take a look at how we're going to add this little graphic. And on these dashboards, you can add charts and graphs and whatever you'd like. I always try to add things that are a quick visual for the person that's using it and whatever's going to be beneficial. So for this, I want the user to be able to quickly look and see how many employees are there total and how many employees are in each department. So I went ahead and set up kind of the basis here because this is the information that I know. But as we had talked about previously, our departments can change. We can add to them, we can take away. So we don't want to predefine it here. We're going to do that through some code. So what I did is I actually added another module just by going Insert Module and added this subtotal employee. And I want to do this as a public sub because I want to be able to use it in a few places. Now, for this one gets a little bit complicated, so I'm going to go ahead and try to walk you through it. I dimmed all my variables, so I have a last row, but then I have a last row E. Oftentimes I'll do that based on which sheet it's referring to. So with the E, it's referring to the employee sheet. I also added a count because we're going to be totaling things. I have I and J as integers, and you'll see why I have that in a moment. And then I have find because we're going to have to be searching for the departments within our employee list and to be able to count them up. All right, so I started this one off with sheet 1, and you just make sure that you go down and do the end with. That catches me a lot. And I went ahead and decided to first of all, go ahead and make the last row for sheet 3, which is our list. So I did dot cells, rows dot count, column 4, because if we go back to our sheet on lists, our departments are in column 4. So I wanted to know what's the last row that's being used there. Now, once I did that, basically what we're doing here is we're going to copy everything that's on that list. It's in a nice alphabetical order already, and we're going to copy it. So it's just sheet 3. Now, here's something new you may not have seen before. The way I select the range on sheet 3 for the departments is I say, okay, it's starting at cell D2 because we don't want the column header. And it's going to go through to D and whatever that last row is. Well, we just found out what the last row is from this line of code here. So I can write it as in quotes D2 colon D, end quote, then the and symbol, and then last row. And that's your new range that it's going to copy. And you just do dot copy. Then you figure out where you want to paste it. Well, back over here, we want to paste this information under the company wide. So that's going to be in cell B3. So we simply come here and we say dot range B13, dot range B13, paste special. And that will then paste all of those departments onto your dashboard sheet. So after we do that, now we need to look at the totals. Well, I am still with sheet 1, so I went ahead and decided to reuse my last row variable. So on sheet 1, I am looking at what is the last row of all the departments I just added in. So it's dot cells, rows dot count, column 2, because we're pasting in the B column. So that's going to be column 2. And then, yeah, the dot end XL up dot row, just like we've been doing this whole time. So now I want to go from cell B13, which is where the initial pasting was. So I start with from I equals 13 to last row. This is all on sheet 1. I'm going to set our find as dot cells I column 2. So basically then if I is 13, that means row 13, column 2, which is B, that department is now my find. Now I take my count and I have to set it to 0 because I'm going to be reusing it quite a bit. And now I go to sheet 2 where all the information is. I need to find my department in sheet 2. All right, so we're going to set our last row E. Um, from the employee sheet, we're going to do dot cells, rows dot count, but we're doing column 14, which is the same thing as column N. And when we look at our employee data, that's where our departments are, is in column N. So that's 14. And then, of course, the dot end XL up dot row. So we're going to now say for J equals 2 to last row E. So basically row 2 to the last row on that sheet. If dot cells J and then column 14 equals find, and remember find is the department. If it equals that, then it's going to add 1 to our count. So you just say count, which starts off as 0, equals count plus 1. And then it's going to go to the next row. And it's going to keep doing that. And it's going to keep adding up in our count. So then after it goes all the way to the last row E, it's going to come out here and it's going to say, okay, sheet 1 dot cells I comma 3, so we're back on the I's, is going to equal the count. So it's going to take that total and it's going to put it into the column that's next to the department we're currently looking at. Now, while I'm there, I go ahead and add in, because the dashboard is a visual thing, so I add in a few formatting things. Like I decided I wanted the totals that come back to be centered within the cell. So horizontal alignment equals Excel center. And then I decided I wanted to have a border around each of the cells. So for the department name, which is in column 2, I do this border around. And then for the total column, which is in column 3, or yeah, column 3, I do the same thing. And that way it just kind of works through as you go. Now it's going to go through this, it's going to keep looping through all your departments until it has a count for each one. And they're going to be horizontally, they're going to be centered, there's going to have a border. Then at the very end, I want it to give me a full company total that's going to go up there in cell C12, right next to where I had company-wide total. So there's something that's called a worksheet function dot sum. And I use this same little trick. Previously we had said what last row was. So I can come up here now and say, I want you to sum up C13 all the way to the last row on the dashboard. And then I want you to go ahead and center it as well. So it seems like pretty complicated code. It's just a lot of your with sheets, and you have a lot of for loops, and you just have to make sure the biggest thing is to close those up each time. So close your with an end with. When you have a for loop, make sure you have a next, because those are the things that are going to throw you a lot of errors. So now, if I want to run this, it's as simple as sitting here and clicking this button. Now let's go to our dashboard. And look at that. So now we have all of our departments listed. We have the total for each department, and we have the total number of employees. It once again seems like it's a little messy code. It's probably the messiest we've had since doing this series, but it's really a great visual when somebody logs in here and they can see how many employees there are. Now, we built this in a public module. We need to use it somewhere. And basically, I all you have to do is copy the name of the sub, not the word sub, just the name of the sub. And you got to figure out where it's going to be most beneficial. Now, a couple places you could do it. You could do it on open, like when you open the workbook, it'll calculate it, and that you would put in here. But I don't think we want to do that, because as we're adding employees, we want that total to be updating. So I'm going to come back to my form employee, go to Save Employee, View Code. Now, right in here, because if you edit an employee or add an employee, their department can change. So at the end of this code, I am going to put total employee. So every time you click that button, it's going to run that on the dashboard. So it's something else you don't have to think about doing later. Well, we're in the final stretch of this one, and basically what we have left is just making the dashboard look pretty. And when I do that, I like to hide unneeded columns. So what you can do is click on, like in this case, column E. If I click on column E, this is a good field for your user to be seeing. So I click column E, I select Shift, Control, and the right arrow, and it selects all the way out to the end of your sheet. And I right click and I hit hide. Now you can see when they log in here, they're not going to have all these other columns that they need to deal with. Now I can do the same thing for rows. However, you don't know how many departments you're going to have. So this list will grow. And if you hide your columns, then you're going to potentially be hiding your data. So it's kind of up to you if you want to hide, maybe go down to 100 and hide what's below, but it really doesn't matter. This is the quick visual. I really appreciate you all being with me on this journey through building our employee management tool. And I hope you've learned a lot. If you do have questions, please feel free to drop a comment and ask. I will have this file, of course, in the downloads so that you can have it and you can play with it and customize it. I'm all about educating and making sure people learn how to do this. It can be overwhelming at times, but yeah, I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great day and come back and look for more projects soon.